Hello and welcome to the CYF course. Today we continue on the topic of human development and we will address the 3 to 5 year old stage. So at this stage the issues are identity, identification of one's sexual role, fear, games, boys play with boys and girls with girls, imagination, cause and effect on relationships, and righteousness. At 3 years old, the child starts to be very easygoing. He wants to please his parents. This is generally a time that is very much appreciated by his parents. Before, the child was very focused on himself, and he was in the 2 years old stage with all the rebellion and the anger, and now it becomes much more easier. And the 3-year-olds, they want to do things to please and help the parents. They start to focus more on their environments, on society around them. They are curious to know things about that. That's why they talk a lot and they ask a lot of questions. And sometimes the parents, they try to shut them up because they talk and talk and talk and talk. And the one-word gift of the 3-year-old is why. The child is very receptive. He hears everything. He is curious. He wants to know. So he's asking everything. Why the plane can't fly? Because they have powerful engines. But why do they have powerful engines? Oh, because there are very gifted engineers who can create this kind of stuff. Why these engineers are so gifted? And he's asking why and why, and there is never enough answers actually. At this age, if the parents say something or react to what has happened, the child uses the same word. He's talking and he's picking up what his parents are doing. He's copying his parents in a lot of things, even in worship, in church. If he sees his parents closing the eyes and raising up the hands, the 3-year-old will do the same. He's learning by copying and by doing the same thing that he observes his parents do. And he repeats the word he hears, so be careful, parents, what kind of words you use. He brings the parents to the end of their knowledge and sends them back to their encyclopedias. It's a season where the child gathers information about the world. And it is important that we do not make jokes or ridicule them at this age. We don't joke about their learning. Otherwise, it can lead to great confusion and also show them that they cannot trust authority. So, if the child is asking you, "Dad, what is this?" It's a plane. And 5 minutes later, "Dad, what is this?" It's a car. Don't do that because the child is confused after that. Sometimes you are irritating because he's asking several times the same questions. So when he's asking several times the same question, you tell him, "But you already know. Can you tell me what it is?" "Oh, it's a plane." "Yes, you know it. That's great." Because most of the time he knows, but he's insecure and he wants to check if it's still the same. So affirm him rather than mocking him, even if sometimes it's a bit too much, especially for the introvert. Be precise and give them accurate information, please. If the child asks several times, even if he asks to several people, tell them that he already knows. Now, he needs to be taught that he's not the center of the world anymore. Because when the child has a question or something to say, he will interrupt you, even if you are with friends having a discussion. He will come in the middle and he will fight to be the center once again. He will draw and keep the attention on him. But he needs to be taught what he can speak and when he cannot speak, that he can't interrupt adults at any time. He has to learn politeness and he has to learn to wait for his turn. He is not the center anymore. And you continue to teach him the social contract, how to behave with other people in society. If we let him interrupt and are always attentive when he wants to talk, we teach him to believe he is more important than others. And we teach him to believe that he is the center of the world. And please, the child needs to learn that he is no more the center. He needs to let other people finish their discussion, and then after that he can talk. So if your child is coming and you are talking with someone, you say, I hear that you have something to say, I'll come back to you later, but I finish my discussion. And this is important. So the child is learning the limits in the conversation. So teach the child to really say what he thinks, not what he thinks we want to hear or what he should say, but really to be real in what he wants to say. This is a stage where the child is making strong connections between feeling, thinking, and doing. He's trying to decode what the parents feel and to guess what they want. And at this stage, they may over-adapt to your needs because they want to please you. But we don't want the child to guess what he should do or over-adapt to people before someone even asks him, because it will put the child in a bond of wanting to please men and having to do things to please and not just being who he is. We don't want our children to be people who read our minds. If the child does something for us without being asked, we can explain, it's good that you think about my slippers, but you don't have to think about what I need. I'll ask you if I need, don't worry. You can bring my slippers back, thank you. So the child goes to look at the parent's face and try to guess what they feel through the face they are having. Then it is important to teach the child to put words on his emotion. Are you sad? Are you upset? When he is experiencing something, he needs to make the connection and the cause and effect. What provokes which emotion? This feeling is called like that. This is very important. So we can teach her basic foundation to identify and express his emotion for the future. And it's important for us also because the child will learn a lot through us. And Nehemiah 8 verse 10 says, for the joy of the Lord will be your strength. So let us find the joy of the Lord in our lives and in our faces as parents. So the light of Christ can shine through us and our children can live in a joyful environment. At 4 years old, the child starts to experience fear in his life, and he must learn how to manage it. They start having nightmares at night. They talk about scary events and ghosts. They want you to read them stories of Jesus delivering people from demons. This is the time where they need a little light for the night because it is dark and it is scary. The child is afraid of not being nice to the parents because he realizes that he cannot be nice all the time. So he uses his fear. When a person is overwhelmed by fear of something, it is said that they are petrified with fear and can no longer move. And if you can't move, you can't behave badly. This is the extreme case, but you get the idea. Through these fears, the child is using this fear to make him behave because he wants to behave. The parents need to realize that the child needs consistency and boundaries. The more structured and consistent the parents are in their discipline, the less fear will take hold. On the other hand, if parents are inconsistent in the discipline given and do not provide a parental structure sufficient to our needs, the fear will be more consequential. Fear thus becomes the control mechanism that the child imposes on himself in order to accomplish his goal of behaving well. And the child needs to know that his parents are there to help him to do the right thing and to protect him. So please don't nurture the fear in the life of the child. Don't play with it. Some parents use fear against the child as an educational tool. For example, if the child is afraid of the police, the father will tell the child, if you don't behave, I will call the police and they will come and take you to prison. This can lead to nightmares for the child, and that can be an entry door for a spirit of fear. So it is important that we do not play with that. Children at 4 years old are very sensitive to fear. It can enter through different means. It can enter through accident and emotional shocks. It can enter through different ways. But fear is a spirit, and God says, I have not given you a spirit of fear. And we need to be careful not to make room for fear to introduce into our families. If there are constant fears in our lives, it may very well come from this 4-year-old stage, as this is really the place where we deal with that. At 5 years old, the child has a very strong identity at this time. The boy looks to his father and the girl to her mother for a role model. This is where they incorporate the sexual role model. And the 5-year-old is very much on the side of justice because he has gathered information about what to do and what not to do, about what is right and what is wrong. He's very much into black and white thinking. This is the age of legalism and self-righteousness. There are few grace in the 5 years old. Parents need to be perfect or they will say something. Oh, Dad, you are driving too fast. It's only 80 and you are driving to 100. That's not possible. The police will arrest you. Or if you go to the supermarket and you want to taste a grape before buying it to see if it's ripe. Oh, Dad, you are stealing a grape. You are a stealer. You are a robber. You will go to prison. Or if you cut an apple in two, you better have 2 perfect halves. Otherwise, he will say, this is unfair. There is a sensitivity to righteousness, to fairness. And he's going to say what must be done and what must not be done. There are no shortcuts. If you don't do what you have said you should do, the child is hurt in his understanding of justice and he can integrate a spirit of religiosity. Often people are hurt in their sense of justice at this age. And the child likes to pray at this age. And it's good, because if God says he will do something, he will do it. So they will believe, and they have such a strong faith. The faith of a 5-year-old can surpass the faith of an adult. So teach the child to pray, and God answers because the child believes what God says. At this age, we now incorporate our family's moral standards and values. We receive a great deal of information about the role that men and women play in our family, in our culture, in our world. What is the place of man and woman in the family structure? How a man behaves with other men or other women? How a woman behaves with other women or with men? We are trained in these roles by observing and interacting with our father and mother. The father becomes the major role model for sons, and the mother becomes the major role model for daughters. Both parents provide important information about each other's adult roles in the family structures and society. The enemy knows that a person's gender identity is formed at this age. If the child grows up in a healthy environment, the child will have a healthy concept of sexuality. But when the enemy leads an adult to abuse the child is confused. For example, when the child is abused by a person of the same sex, the child can incorporate some homosexual dimension and the belief that he is like this, that God made him like this. It is very sensitive at this time on this aspect. This is really the place where God put the foundation. And the child needs to be protected by his parents. They must be vigilant where they let their child sleep. Unhealthy connections can develop between the child and the parents. One of the greatest struggles of men and women in the Christian community is to do with gender. Actually, 76% of Christian men in one conference confess to having problem with pornography. Many believe that this is part of human nature and that they have to fight against it all their life. But one of the key issues in this problem was found in the relationship of the child with his parents. When the husband takes care of his wife's emotional needs, everything is fine. The mother takes care of her child, a boy for example, and because she is satisfied with her husband, she can give her son the appropriate affection. But if the mother does not receive her husband's affection as she needs it, for one reason or another, she mixes her need for love with the desire to take care of her son. She takes love from her son instead of giving it to him, and the son gradually becomes the surrogate husband who provides for the mother's emotional needs. When the mother takes the son in her arms, in this case, the child feels uncomfortable, and also he has a feeling of anger but without knowing why. The child begins to believe that he has a problem with his sexuality, and as he grows up, he will function to prove that he has problems with his sexuality. Around age 9, the son may become openly angry with his mother and later with women in general and abuse them. And then also take pornography magazines, which is violence against women, and this is his way of taking revenge against his mother. Pornography becomes an addiction. This will lead the child to adultery when he becomes an adult. At the same time, the son is in conflict, an opponent of his father, because he fights for his mother's affection and he is not going to use his father as a role model. There is a way out. It is not a trait of personality of the person, but the bond can be cut. There are spiritual ties that needs to be cut, soul ties. This happens without even sexual abuse. This happens with daughters and their mother or father as well. If the mother does not have a son, or if the son does not meet her emotional needs, the mother may turn to her daughter, and the mother seeks to be fulfilled through her daughter. And in these cases, the parent plays the child in the role of a surrogate spouse. Some conversations, sharing of tears, etc., that normally only spouses share between themselves. The daughter received the message that only a woman can comfort a woman, and that a man cannot do this. The girl plays the role of the husband and becomes confused in her role as a daughter and wife later. If the girl is treated like a boy, she becomes confused. The child's heart must be healed. The girl will also be in competition with her father. And then the girl will be more vulnerable to homosexuality, or will avoid being too close to women not to be abused again, or will develop the hatred of men that she received from her mother, and she will live isolated with bitterness, or will be abusive toward her husband. If the father puts his daughter in the position of wife, it's the same thing. It's a love-hate relationship. Her father's weakness leads her to disrespect men in general, or to seduction, manipulate men, destroy them, will be competitive toward other women, etc. This is very destructive in the child's life, a lot of difficulty in relationship in her life. If the couple have a healthy relationship, there is no risk of abuse. So let's check our hearts to make sure that we do not go to a child to receive his love, but to give it to him. If we have a need, do not go to the child because we would be giving him an emotional burden that he cannot carry. One can always cuddle children, but be careful of the motivation. The child needs to be cuddled and hugged, but the adult's motivation should be to give, not to take. When we have a problem and the child comes to help us, tell him that Jesus will take care of the adult and the child can come back to play. This gives them an example of what to do when they have a problem. Go to Jesus. If the child says that he wants to sleep with his mother, don't panic, but explain to her that it is the spouse who sleeps with his spouse and not the child. The problem of the presence of the invisible mother-in-law is terrible in some homes. There is like a spousal bond between the parents and the child who has become an adult, and this causes a problem in the relationship. In Genesis 2:24, God said, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So it is important that man leaves his mother and cut the umbilical cord, and there is not the mother that is still here in the relationship. This bond must be severed so the woman and man can take their full place and become one. Otherwise, they can't become one. We want children to grow up respecting authority figures. So authority figures must first respect the children, because we will teach them through our example. Children must learn to respect the choices and wishes of others. If we encourage them to read or guess our desires without expressing them, the child will try to please us, over-adapt to our desires, and that is not fair. So what are the issues of this stage in adult life? Some people are always silent because at 3 years old, people always told them to shut up, or they mocked them when they talked and asked questions at this time. So they decided not to talk anymore. Some people, they live in fear, and fear is controlling them. Because at this age, 4 years old, people has used fear to discipline them, people has used fear to play or to make them afraid because it was funny, and it was an entry door for the fear in their life. There is the aspect of self-righteousness. Do you find yourself as forced or pushed to be a defender of the faith, to fight for justice, to identify with a cause, or to correct those who are wrong? The key words here are forced and pressured to do that. Every healthy adult has a responsibility to stand up for his or her belief or faith, to be upright in interactions with others, or to be just and true in the word and deeds. But adults who were hurt in their sense of justice when they were 5 years old find themselves in adulthood with this need that forces or pushes them to correct people they perceive as unjust. And of course, there is this confusion of sexual role and gender. And today we are in a society where we want to make this something normal. You can choose. But very often, for many people, there is a root that comes back to this stage, where the sexual identity, sexual role was not strengthened and was confused. So, as usual, I will put the slide with the steps towards healing and restoration, and you can follow them step by step and invite your Heavenly Father to come and visit you in your memories of this stage. Ask the Lord. Ask your parents, ask the older brothers, uncle, grandparents. Ask people around you about what happened during this stage. But most of all, ask the Holy Spirit to lead you in that. And you can receive information through His revelation. And so let the Father come and touch you in these areas and bring restoration and healing. May the Lord bless you as you take time. Don't rush over this time, but really take the time to come into the presence of God and to receive His presence, who can redeem everything. And after that, as usual, I will put a few questions to help you share, talk, process, and pray for one another so you can integrate even more this topic that is so important. May the Lord bless you.